and welcome to Around the Horns, the show where we are talking about everything that is University of Texas baseball. I'm Aaron. I'm here, as always, with my co-host, Zach. Zach, Texas just went on a little stretch here of 11 straight home games against teams that, they're not the Astros. They're not Team Japan from the World Baseball Classic. That a little bit less competition, but Texas was able to go 11-0. We are going to be talking about that stretch today. We're going to be talking about the sweep of New Orleans. We are going to be talking a lot about Texas Tech and everything coming up as when Big 12 play rolls around. So we've got all that to talk about today and a little more. Zach, how are you doing today?
Doing well. It was a little bit of a late night game. We're recording this on Wednesday, so right after the Incarnate Word game on Tuesday night. But yeah, everything's going well. Really just happy to have Big 12 season here. It's conference time.
Yeah, turns out the pitch clock doesn't have as much of an impact if there's going to be 28 runs scored and then a bunch of walks and rain and mound delays and replay reviews. So the pitch clock, it doesn't you can still play 9 innings in 3.5 hours. That is still possible. We learned that the tough way on Tuesday night. But before we get to that and the rest of this 11-game stretch, let's hit quickly on the New Orleans series, which Texas was able to sweep. Friday, Lucas Gordon, another really good outing. The changeup, man, it's back. They talked about how they wanted him to throw that more, and he certainly made an effort to throw it more, which was really good to see because when he's at his best, he's controlling that fastball on the inside part of the plate against righties, and he's working the changeup off of that. And then that's when you can mix in the slider as a 2-strike pitch as something to use, the second and the third time through the order. But, the bread and butter for Lucas Gordon is always going to be that fastball changeup combo. And he had that going again on Friday.
Yeah. As good as Gordon was, you can argue that LeBlanc was just as good. I mean, he gave up 2 runs in the bottom of the first and a run in the third, and that was it. I mean, New Orleans did a really good job of keeping Texas off kilter. And, there weren't a lot of strikeouts, only 4 on the night. You would expect on a 3-run game for Texas, there'd be a bunch of strikeouts, but there weren't, which was really good. He just kept him off kilter. I mean, I think Coach Pierce at one point mentioned a wiffle ball and he hit it really well, but it was good to see Gordon bounce back and just come out there strong with that changeup.
Yeah, and then just to hit on the rest of the starters quickly, man, Travis Staley, this felt like a really big start for him, just given the fact that Texas is kind of in the middle of, shaking up the pitching rotation a little bit. LBJ, we'll talk about him. He moved into the weekend rotation. What does that mean for Zane Morehouse, who appears to kind of be the 9th inning guy now? You got Charlie Hurley, who's been awesome in any role. Travis Staley's been up and down. We know that about him, but if they were thinking about making a change in Travis Staley's role, he made a big statement on Saturday with his best outing as a Texas Longhorn, 6 innings, 9 strikeouts. The changeup was fantastic. I talked about it a little bit on the message boards on Orange Bloods. He tunnels it really well with his fastball. When he's got his fastball command, he's able to throw it to the outside corner to the top of the plate, and he lets that changeup come right off of it to where the hitters think it's a fastball, and then it just kind of drops off the table with that high arm slot that he throws it from. It was a career day for Travis Staley, and it was a time when it felt like he really needed to have a big day to kind of cement his spot, as an important pitcher on this team.
Yeah, it was massive. And you could tell after the game that, Coach Pierce was just elated that all the work they've put into Staley, he came in having TJ coming out of high school. So he was really kind of delayed in getting going. Last year, he obviously was a really bright start and then kind of fell off towards the end. And the thing about Staley was always, he's going to get 4 innings for you. It's getting to that 5th inning. You just didn't know when the wheels were going to fall off. And so this past week and watching him, you're like, he looks really strong. No, he looks really, really strong. And then he said he was starting mixing that. You could see that curveball he started mixing in. It's not sharp. It's definitely not a hard curveball. But it's just enough of that same movement off the changeup that all of a sudden it throws those batters off. And he was using it to a good effect. And he talked about having spent a lot of time on that, and Coach Pierce touched on that as well. But it was really, really good to see him go out and work through that. So that was great.
Yeah, he was pumping strikes and he went 6 innings. I think he was going to go back out for a seventh, but Texas ended up having a very long inning at the plate in the bottom of the sixth. So they decided just to pull the plug with the big lead on him. And then Sunday, LBJ, the day we've been waiting for, he moved into the weekend rotation. He looked really good through three. He looked like, the LBJ we'd seen early in the year, just kind of dominating with that fastball. The fastball was in the zone. He was getting swings and misses as you would expect. On his slider and his splitter against a team like New Orleans. Yeah. Then the fourth inning came around and this just happens sometimes in college baseball. Flip a switch. He didn't have it anymore. He started getting hit a little bit. He started to lose command with pretty much all of his pitches. He was able to get out of the inning there, but he only ended up going 4. But overall, it was good to see him pitch on a Sunday. It was good to see him, at least for 3 innings, kind of get back to dominating there for a stretch. And it's hard to say exactly what Texas is going to get from LBJ from start to start, but I maintain that he has the highest ceiling and his floor. While you could argue, LeBaron Johnson, he might have a bit of a low floor. Travis Staley has a low floor. Zane Morehouse is a low floor. Like all these guys have low floors, so I like the idea of just rolling him out there on a Sunday when you have that upside of a guy that might just go 7 scoreless at any given moment.
Yeah, I mean, Coach Pierce has talked about him having Friday night electric stuff, and if he's on, he's on. We saw it during LSU, and even though he only went 4 innings, he still had 6 strikeouts. Like he was mowing down guys at the beginning, and if he can make sure that he just stays a little more consistent. And I was wondering when I was watching on Sunday if it wasn't some about the rhythm. I feel like if he stays in rhythm, he's really, really strong. It's when he gets a little off rhythm that's where he starts to lose that release point, because he's a pretty high leverage guy in terms of his arm slot coming over the top. But at the same time, I didn't hate it because he started on Sunday. He had pitched on Tuesday prior and he threw 55 there. So really, it kind of gives him a little break and getting rested up for this coming week against Tech. We also got to see 3 innings out of David Shaw, and he was really good. He got his first win of the season. So I actually didn't hate the fact that he exited early.
Yeah, no, I mean, David Shaw just continues to be incredible. I wrote about it. If you are tall and you're left-handed and you throw kind of funny, which, David Shaw, he just got that lankiness, goofy factor to him where it's just not going to be a comfortable at bat. You don't exactly know where the ball's, coming out of. And if you can do all that, and throw strikes, you're just going to be tough to hit. And that's what David Shaw's been doing all year. Let's talk a little bit about the bats. And, the guy I really just want to talk about is Eric Kennedy. He, not just in the New Orleans series, but in the 2 games leading up to it in the midweek. He was on a heater, man. I mean, I think he had 5 homers over a 5-game stretch. He's just hitting a beach ball out there. David Pierce said it was definitely the best he's ever seen him in his long career at Texas. He's carrying himself. He's got his chest back. He looks like a guy that has played a lot of college baseball and is very happy to beat up on these teams that just, they're not as good as Eric Kennedy.
Yeah, and he, including if you go all the way back to the North Dakota State game on March 15th, yeah, he has 5 home runs in 5 games essentially. Yeah. And there was one ball that he hit this past weekend that almost went out as well. I mean, it was caught at the wall. So yeah, he's seeing the ball. Coach Pierce talked about they've done a little tweaking with his swinging motion. I don't know if it's just experience. I don't know if it's just like we're seeing the ceiling of EK, but yeah, talk about a heater. The dude is on one for sure.
Yeah, we need him to take it to that next level. We've talked about it a little bit, just me and you, but if he's going to be a guy that's going to hit, 20, 25 homers at Dish Walk Field, he's got to hit the taco sign. It has to happen. I have not been to Taco Shack in a long time, but if Eric Kennedy hits the taco sign and gives everyone in the park free tacos, I'll be there. I will get my free tacos. I would be very happy. I would thank Eric Kennedy on the way out, if we get to talk to him. I think that's the next step in his development and something that MLB scouts probably are looking for at this point, because they know he's got the speed. They know he's got the pop. He's shown the ability to play a little bit of center field. He's shown off the arm a little bit. Can you provide the locals with free tacos? That's kind of the next natural step in a college baseball player's progression.
Look, that's what it's all about. The free tacos. Yeah. He's got to make it happen. So no, it's been really good to see. And then the other thing is, if you look at the top of the lineup, I mean, it's much needed, right? Texas has to have a guy like EK get on base. If he's hitting dingers right off the bat, well, even better. I mean, give them an early run and let them coast. So
yeah, I mean, and just overall, the Texas team is starting to hit a lot more homers. I'm starting to have 2022 flashbacks. We can move into Incarnate Word now, but I mean, Peyton Powell's hitting homers. Dylan Campbell is starting to get that power swing back. His timing is getting a little bit better. Derek Guillemette hit 2 home runs on Tuesday night against Incarnate Ward, and they were both just complete lasers. You could tell he really wanted to pimp the grand slam, and then just for a second, he was like, I got to run just a little bit just in case, but I mean, it was gone. So he could have done whatever he wanted there, but
yeah,
starting. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, even Daly, he hit a home run over the weekend, and he almost hit. I mean, it was caught at the wall, like it was a foot away. So yeah, it's Jack O'Dowd hit that opposite field home run. I was like, how? I don't know how the law of physics were just bent right there, but they definitely were, because I didn't know that he could go oppo. So.
Yeah, I mean, Jack O'Dowd had been a guy that just, he had been putting together some decent at-bats, but he hadn't been generating a lot of pop. And then out of nowhere, just Oppo Taco left center field, just carrying over the wall through the rain. I was like, okay, Jack O'Dowd, you have my attention now. But yeah, I mean, we talked a lot about small ball coming into the year, stealing bases. That hasn't really happened a lot. They've kind of just been going up there and swinging. And lately, they've been hitting a lot of homers. We will see if they're able to do that against better pitching, as Texas is about to we're about to run into a lot better pitching. We'll see if that carries on, but power is power. I mean, if these guys have shown the ability to hit the ball over the fence. So if that's something they're going to do, that's the easiest way to score runs. That's for sure. It's the simplest, A to B straight line. If you hit the ball over a fence, you get some runs. So if they can continue to do that, that will be big. Tuesday night against Incarnate Ward, David Pierce elected to give Charlie Hurley the start. He only threw 51 pitches, I believe, which is like the perfect amount for him. I think it keeps him stretched out to where if they want to use him in a multi-inning role, which, they likely will, he's stretched out and ready to go multiple innings, but also 51 pitches. If he has to come in a pinch on a Friday or a Saturday, you would think his arm will be able to bounce back in time to do that. And he looks good. He gave up an absolute tater to second pitch of the game. The guy just took him at just a really good swing from the Incarnate Ward player there. But after that, Hurley was just his usual self. He dominated there for 4 innings. And then, the pitching after that wasn't great, but did you see anything from Hurley or the rest of the guys that you wanted to point out?
I thought DJ Burke did a solid job coming in a tight spot and getting some outs. Obviously he gave up a walk, but at the same time, Heston Toll, he just wasn't locating. He was kind of just throwing it over the plate last night. He's working fast, but he also slipped on his footing. And that's when you talk about they had to come out and put some Diamond Dry on the mound. I don't think he was comfortable with his footing all night.
Yeah.
Because if you notice, his breaking balls were not sharp after that. He was letting them hang. And so it was a hard night for pitchers in general. I mean, the ball's wet. You're trying to get it over through, and it wasn't working. Even Zane Morehouse, he just kind of wasn't locating his breaking balls. Ace Whitehead, the guy's done nothing but pump in strikes, and even he couldn't locate the zone. You're going to have these nights on Tuesday nights. It's going to happen. So not terribly concerned, but it is what it is.
Yeah, no, I fall into the same boat there. I mean, it's a Tuesday night, it's been a long homestand with a lot of games. Texas was not exactly pitching, they're super high leverage arms for the most part. There were a couple of them, but yeah, I mean, the mound was slick. The ball was wet. You would still like to be able to throw strikes. None of those guys are going to make excuses, but it kind of is what it is there. I'm not too worried about that going forward. Just overall takes on this stretch from, Texas handling business against these really bad teams. There's been some talk, it's hard to know exactly what to take away. It's been the competition hasn't been great. What does that mean going forward? What did we actually learn about this team? I think those are all fair questions that, we're only going to know the answer to with time, but Texas needed these wins regardless. Whoever they were coming against, 11-0 is always going to be better than 9-2 or 8-3. And I still think this is a team that is probably going to be on the bubble, post Big 12 tournament. And these wins, while they might not help the RPI that much, a loss would hurt the RPI significantly. So it's always good to win these games, stack up the wins on the record. I think we saw some improvement from the Texas team in pretty much every single department on offense, defense, and pitching. there were still some little things that they need to get cleaned up. They still make a lot of little mistakes throughout the course of the game that have gone unnoticed during this stretch because they've had, 6, 7 run leads. But if you make a little mistake, you have just a random pass ball in the 7th inning against Texas Tech, that's going to matter. If, you're not able to get your foot on first base, or you make a base running mistake, that stuff's going to matter a lot more, in a high leverage spot in Stillwater than it is, at home against A&M Corpus and stuff like that. So what are your overall thoughts on this long stretch? I'm kind of bouncing all over the wall here, but that's just kind of where my mind's been during this winning streak.
Yeah, I think, overall, I think the team has improved. We talked to Coach Pierce about a guy like Jalen Flores. You're a true freshman coming into college, and you get to face up against Missouri, which looks a lot better now that they've swept Tennessee, Arkansas, who's one of the top 10 teams in the nation, and Vanderbilt, who is definitely one of the top 10 teams in the nation. There was going to be some growing pains for these young guys. And so a guy like Galvan, a guy like Jared Thomas, a guy like Jalen Flores, even guys like DC, who, has had his moments in right field, they're not used to playing this many innings. I mean, yeah, DC got a bunch of time last year. But even a guy like Porter Brown out in left field, he transferred from TCU. He played, but he wasn't an everyday starter. And so you look at these guys taking on new positions like Daly does at shortstop, you're going to have some growing pains. I think the defense has settled down significantly. I think there's still going to be some moments where you're like, ugh. And I think part of that is guys may not be playing in their optimal position long term. That's, high growth. But this is where the Texas squad needs them to play right now. As far as starting pitching, they've had their ups and downs. I think we were always going to see that with Staley and Morehouse. They're guys that, I don't think have the highest ceilings, but they have the talent there, and they have the arm that when they're on, they're really, really good. If you look at a guy like LBJ, it's all about the excitement of, can he take the next step? Can he get to the next step after that and after that? But the bullpen has been really, I would say, consistent, if nothing else. Like, they've been solid. They've got out of some jams. They've given up some hits and run. Absolutely. But to me, the most important thing is this stretch of 11 games against, let's call it, just not great competition, has allowed Texas offensively to get some confidence. And half the time, it's about confidence. You can adjust timing. You can do a lot of things. Look, if you don't think you're doing good right now at the plate, like, you're going to have a really bad time at the plate. And so that changing that mindset and getting them used to winning, getting used to closing games out or blowing guys out, I think is really important. So.
Yeah, man. I mean, confidence is confidence no matter how it comes. It doesn't matter how you get it. If you're feeling confident, that's how you're feeling. And you'd rather be feeling confident than not confident going into a series against Texas Tech. When you talk about hitters, you can lose that confidence pretty quickly. You can come in red hot, and then you could face Texas Tech and, go 0 for 4 with 3 Ks, and you're not going to be feeling so hot going into the next day. But there are going to be some guys that confidence is going to help them later on in the year or just in this upcoming series. And that will have an impact for Texas. So it's definitely been an important stretch. I think just the overall vibes of the team has been most important for me. You come out of that Cal State Fullerton series and you're feeling a lot of pressure. This is Texas baseball, their expectations, and you're coming out of that Cal State Fullerton series going, oh man, like we don't have much of a margin for error here. We really got to rip off some wins. You could feel the team was a little tight. David Pierce said they were tired.
Yeah.
Winning 11 straight, just overall, it's going to make the team feel like, we can do this. All of our goals, that we set out at the beginning of the season, we can still achieve them. They're all still in front of us. And just overall, the team is going to be feeling good going into Texas Tech, which is a nice segue to, let's just go ahead and talk about the Red Raiders. This is the first Big 12 series for Texas. Texas Tech opened up last weekend against Oklahoma State in Lubbock. Texas Tech was able to win 2 out of 3. They won on Friday on this crazy extra inning game where Gavin Cash had a pop up to left field, with 2 outs and the winning run on base. The Oklahoma State guy lost the ball somehow, just couldn't make the catch, and Texas Tech wins on just a ridiculous walk-off. We have seen that happen before. They were picked to finish 3rd preseason coming into the year. I would say right now, they're probably the favorite. If you had me, make a pick right now, Texas Tech is, looking really good overall, but they haven't played a ton. They've had a pretty decent schedule. They played Iowa, they played Gonzaga. You'll talk about that a little bit. They went to Shriners and had a okay showing there. But the thing I want to bring up about Texas Tech, which always seems relevant, it's the home road stuff year by year. We know Texas Tech, they like to mash. Typically, they like to mash. They play in that tiny ballpark. Lubbock, things get weird. That's just how Lubbock is. Baseball is no exception to that rule. 2021. So this is all the post-COVID stuff. Texas Tech in 2021, 27-7 at home, 12-10 in other, which is either road games or neutral site games. 2022, 21-5 at home, 18-17 in the other games. And then so far in 2023, Zach, this team has played 23 games so far this year, and 19 of them have been at home. They're 17-2 at home, and then 1-2 at the Shriners Classic in Houston at a neutral field. It's always a big deal for Texas Tech. They have loaded up that home schedule once again, and it's gotten them a lot of wins. It has them feeling good, so it's hard to kind of poke holes in the strategy there. But man, what else do you want to add about Tech, their overall profile, expectations, the competition they've played? I'll let you go ahead and have free reign here with Texas Tech.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I mean, the home scheduling is a really big thing. It always has been for Tech. Yeah. They don't play away from home. It's one of those deals where they're going to load up games on the front end of the season. And you go back to that, talking about the 11 games at home against competition for Texas. This is what Tech does every year. They start out the year and they'll play a big time team here and there. But for the most part, they're figuring things out. They're ironing out the kinks. They're building confidence, and they roll into conference play. And it's like, well, crap, they've got a really good record, and, they can hit the ball a million miles out of Lubbock. But, playing away from a home is where they've kind of fallen off the cliff at times. The Statesboro Regional last year, they had an amazing offense last year. They go out there and they scored, I think, 5 total runs or 6 total runs. Like they couldn't hit the ball. And that's a big ballpark too. So yeah, it's been interesting. They did sweep Gonzaga to start the year in 4 games, which normally that would be a pretty big deal. But this year, Gonzaga is really kind of not having a good time. Their pitching is not what it was last year, for sure. They don't have 5 guys rolling out there just pumping 100. They swept Western Illinois, who is pretty terrible. They apparently hate the armed forces. They swept Air Force, going 2-0 in a midweek. And then in the Shriners Classic is where you saw the first blip and the first, is this team really that good? They went 0-1 against Rice, so they lost that Friday night game against Rice, and realistically, Rice just looked like a much better team. They bounced back to beat Michigan, and then they played that 16-inning late, it was I think the game started at 6 or 6:30 at night on a Sunday.
Yeah,
and they're playing A&M, and it goes 16 innings. Everyone's just like, please, for the love of God, turn this thing off. Like this, you had to kind of watch, because you're like, I can't look away, but this is ugly baseball. It wasn't good. There was a bunch of men left on base. Anyways, they ended up losing that game. And then since then, they beat New Mexico in the midweek. They swept Iowa, they didn't. They lost with the Sunday game to Iowa.
Yeah, they won 2 out of 3 against Iowa.
But I thought that was actually a pretty good series for them to win at home, simply because Iowa's got some arms. They've got some dudes. And then they beat UT Arlington during the midweek. And then they, like you said, they had a really wonky walk-off that we call it the Lubbock double on Friday night. They lost to Oklahoma State on Saturday. And then interestingly enough, they absolutely just blew out Oklahoma State 12-1 in 7 innings on Sunday. And why that's significant is Oklahoma State was throwing their star pitcher, Jaron Watts-Brown. He got to the 5th inning and absolutely imploded. They gave up 10 runs in the single inning, and that was essentially ball game, right? But I just don't know what to make of their schedule. I feel like they can be really, really good, or they can be a bunch of meh. So
we'll find out this weekend. The win, the series win against Oklahoma State is certainly significant. We were on the show last week talking about how that just could sneakily, be for that could have a major impact on the Big 12 title race. And winning that series, even though it was in Texas Tech, even though it was in Lubbock, that's a big deal. Man, these guys, their batting stats, they jump off the page as usual. I'll let you go and go through it, man. But I'll lead us off. Gavin Cash, man. This was as expected. Once we got the notification at the end of last season that Gavin Cash was transferring to Texas Tech, we saw this coming from a mile away, right? I mean, 440 batting average. He's got 7 homers. I mean, this is not a surprise to us.
Yeah, and we saw what he did out in the California League. We all knew that he could hit. It was just him putting it all together. But yeah, I mean, their RPI is 27, their strength of schedule 65, batting average is 325. So yeah, they can hit the ball. Probably more ridiculous is their OPS is 996.
Yeah, a lot of power.
As a team, it's 996. All right, that's good. They've hit 35 home runs, so only 7 more than Texas. That's respectable by Texas. What was interesting to me is their stolen bases. They've actually run a little bit more this year than I would typically expect out of Tech. They're 16 out of 20. Their ERA is at 3.64, so that's respectable for a Tech team. What really stands out to me is their fielding, though. Knowing that they've played all these games at home, their fielding's at 956. So they've made some errors, right? And that's something to watch for. Third baseman Kevin Bizzell, he's a redshirt freshman. He's made the most errors. Their second baseman Green, I think he's a senior, if I remember correctly. He's made a few. The freshman Lopez starts at shortstop. He's made a few. So it's just, they've had some issues booting it around. So that'll be something to watch on this weekend, on Friday and Saturday and Sunday against Texas. What does that look like? Can Texas put the ball in play and put pressure on that defense? So
yeah, I mean, then you think, you talked about how those errors have been coming at home. You go to the dish where, that turf seems to jump on people and give some people trouble from time to time. Obviously, this is a conference team that, some of these guys have played at Texas before, but it has been a couple of years. And a lot of these guys have not played, there at Texas on the turf there at the dish. The errors will definitely be a big part of the series on both sides. That'll be something to watch. You look at the pitching for these guys. Basically, the quick summary is they have a lot of guys and they use a lot of guys. And, a lot of them are very good. Brendan Gurton has been the Friday guy. He struggled a little bit. He's got a 4.5 ERA with almost a 1.6 whip. I noticed he has not pitched 5 innings this month in any of his starts, and he has 19 strikeouts on the year, 17 walks. That is, that's in 22 innings. That's a lot of walks. So that's not a very good strikeout to walk ratio. He's not a guy that's going to go deep into a game like a typical Friday starter. So they haven't announced their rotation yet, but if they do stick with Gurton on Friday night, you would give Texas the edge there from just a starting pitcher perspective with the way Lucas Gordon has been pitching. But, Friday and Sunday, those are going to be bullpen games for Tech. They've got a lot of good relievers. Saturday is when they actually pitch their best pitcher, according to the stats, at least, and what we saw a little bit. It's left-hander Mason Molina. It'll be another lefty out there for Texas to face. He's got a 2.81 ERA on the year, a very solid 1.17 whip. He goes a little bit deeper into games. He's got a lot better strikeout stats. He's been their best guy. He's been their most reliable guy. It'll be interesting to see if they stick with him on Saturday against what we expect to be Travis Staley. And then Sunday, it's going to be a bullpen game pretty much. They've been rolling out the freshman lefty on Tabor Fast. He's got a 5.51 ERA. He's got a whip of almost 2. He just doesn't go deep into games at all. And they've got a lot of relievers that are able to come in and throw multiple innings at a time, get some strikeouts, prevent some runs. I'll let you talk a little bit more about any of those bullpen guys, or if you want to hit on some of the hitters that Tech is going to be rolling out, go ahead.
Yeah, so, Mason Molina is a Cali kid. He's a sophomore. Texas saw him last season on that Sunday when they bounced back. And, he gave up 5 hits, 3 runs, and only 4 innings. He was kind of batted around. But the interesting thing is Texas Tech doesn't have any new arms outside of Tabor Fast, the freshman on Sunday, or that's been pitching on Sunday, and then Brendan Gurton. Outside of that, Texas has seen all these arms. Their best reliever, or best 2 relievers probably, is Trendon Parrish and Brandon Beckel. And Texas batted them around last season. So I think the good news is that Texas has a lot of tape and has a lot of experience with some of these pitchers. Of course, they're going to be different year over year. They're going to add pitches. They're going to adjust. They're going to add more velo or whatever else. But it'll be interesting to see, because if everyone remembers last season, both Friday and Saturday were both 10-inning games that, we don't even want to go back into how Texas lost. But I think playing at home, I do think Texas has a good lineup for this this pitching rotation against Texas Tech. For me, it's more about, can Texas handle the batting for Texas Tech? So, but in terms of players to watch, we mentioned already sophomore Gavin Cash, 440 with a 1.2 OPS. He's got 7 home runs. The junior college transfer Austin Green, he's hitting 418 with a 1.3 OPS. He's got 6 home runs. And then interestingly enough, Tech actually starts 2 freshmen, Gage Harrelson and Tracer Lopez. Now, Gage Harrelson starts mostly because of the injury to Dylan Carter, which I think his injury status is still up in the air. He injured his hand against Iowa. He wasn't at all, he hasn't played since, but he potentially could be back because he was hitting probably the best out of any of the hitters for Tech. And then Kevin Bizzell, he's a redshirt freshman, and he's actually a really good kid. I know some folks that know him, and he's hitting 341. But they just have a really stacked lineup, kind of up and down the lineup. They added Wofford transfer Nolan Hester. He's their speed guy. He gets on base and likes to move over. So, the Texas pitchers have their work cut out for them. But I do think the Texas hitters can get to this rotation for Tech.
Yeah, there could be a lot of fireworks. I mean, I've referenced it a couple of times. It's like with this Texas bullpen, man, they have been incredible. And it's not like they've got a bunch of guys going out there throwing 97 with just absolute hammer breaking balls, but they've been getting it done. I'm not really sure how. This will be the real test of, is this bullpen legit? 3-game sample size, we won't be freaking out one way or another, but this is a very good test for a Texas pitching staff that has been very good pretty much all year. We'll get to the rest of the country later, but I mean, you look back at that Arlington series and Texas might have faced 3 Omaha teams in Arlington, and that might look like a good performance coming to the end of the year. Tech can swing it. It'll be interesting to see how they swing it at the Dish compared to there in Lubbock. We talked a lot about Texas Tech. Zach, what is your pick for the weekend? We both had sweeps. No, you had 2-1 against New Orleans.
I had 2-1. I said I wanted Texas to prove it, and they proved it. They brought it. So,
all right, what do you got against Tech?
So the good news is I actually have only gotten one prediction right for the weekend series this season. So I actually feel really comfortable in saying I'm predicting Texas to go 1-2, and that's because I just want to see Texas. I want to see Staley, and I want to see LBJ against the Texas hitting, like strength on strength. What does that look like? So it's going to be warm this weekend. The wind's probably going to be blowing out to left field like it was against Incarnate Word. So what does that mean for the team? Can they handle the pressure? What about you?
Yep. I like you providing the good news there, saying that you've not been money on your picks all year. And then you're going 1-2. The bad news, I've been very good with my predictions. I think the only miss I had was I said 1-2 in Arlington instead of 0-3. Besides that, I have been money on the weekend predictions.
Yeah.
And I'm also going 1-2 for Texas this weekend. For a while now, I've been looking at the schedule and I've been thinking Texas Tech sweep all the way. I've just been really impressed with them. But then Texas has this stretch, and then I'm looking at the home road stuff for Tech. I'm looking at the home road stuff for Texas, knowing how the Dish plays, knowing that Texas does have some legitimate starters. I feel really good about what I'm seeing from Lucas Gordon right now. I changed my pick to 1-2. I don't think Texas will get swept this weekend. I think, if I had to pick a game for Texas to win, I would say Friday. I think they come out with that momentum. Tech's first true road game of the entire season. The crowd on Friday hopefully will be good. I know the basketball game will take place during the baseball game, so that's not going to help a ton from a crowd perspective, but I still would expect a pretty solid showing at the Dish on a Friday night to welcome Texas Tech to town. So I think home field gets Texas a win here. So I'm going to go 1-2.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I can honestly see this series going every situation. I don't see a sweep. These teams have played far too often. I think the Longhorn Network stat was 16-16, and they were just completely gridlocked and back and forth years. Tech won last year in Lubbock. Arguably, that series could have been a sweep by Texas all the way through, or It could have been, what it was, which is 1-2. But yeah, this definitely feels like a series that if Texas wins, it creates some really good momentum for them. Especially if you start kind of peeking ahead to the schedule, because after Texas Tech, they got a Tuesday midweek game against A&M, and then they travel immediately to Stillwater to play Oklahoma State. So it's almost imperative to some extent that Texas at least win one game this weekend from an RPI standpoint and a conference positioning standpoint. So,
Yeah, no, I mean, it's going to be a big stretch. I hope Texas is getting a lot of, physical rest, mental recovery on Wednesday and Thursday, because the next 7 games, they're going to be taxing. They're going to be emotional. There's going to be just a lot of high leverage moments. I mean, you've just got rivals against Texas Tech and A&M, and then you're going to Oklahoma State. It's going to be an exciting stretch of baseball. It would be huge for Texas to take 2 out of 3 this weekend against Tech. But if they're able to just get one, I don't think it's the end of the world, even though you would like to see Texas win the home series. Zach, there were some other teams in the Big 12 that started Big 12 play last weekend. Do you want to touch on some of the series that took place around the Big 12 while Texas beat up on New Orleans?
Yeah, so there was 2 other series that went on. Baylor, surprisingly, maybe shockingly, would be more appropriately, took 2 of 3 from Kansas State. I thought Kansas State had been playing pretty well, so that was a bit of a surprise. Some clutch hitting and some really good pitching by Baylor. They were able to win the series. That's huge for them to start conference off 2-1, considering how bad they've looked. And then the other, it was, I don't know, maybe it wasn't a surprise to some, but for me, it was actually quite surprising, was Oklahoma took 2 of 3 in Norman against TCU. TCU's looked a little rocky here and there as of late. They're only 1 game above 500, but I was really surprised that Oklahoma was able to pull out that win, because I thought TCU just had the more talent overall, and they were trending a little better than Oklahoma. But suddenly Oklahoma's sitting at 13-7. They've kind of pulled a Texas where they looked a little shaky at first, and now they're coming right back at it. So, those are the only series that have occurred so far. This weekend, obviously, Texas Tech travels down to Austin to take on the Horns. Baylor gets rewarded with their win in conference play to go play Oklahoma State. So best of luck to you. And then TCU's hosting Kansas. They're looking to bounce back as KU starts conference play. And then Oklahoma travels to Manhattan to take on K-State. So, that's actually really interesting then, because if K-State can bounce back and beat Oklahoma, that kind of negates all that good momentum of beating TCU. And really, if we start, it'll take first 2 weekends probably to see where things shake out, but this could be one of those conference seasons where everything is just completely up in the air and no one's going to know until the last weekend.
Yeah, Baylor taking 2 out of 3 against Kansas State kind of shook me a little bit. I was starting to look at Baylor thinking these guys might win like 0-1 conference games this year. Like, I thought they might have been that bad. And, this doesn't mean they're good by any stretch, but at least we know now they are capable of winning a series against a team like Kansas State, who is not that bad. And we know Kansas State is capable of losing to even Baylor. So we'll see if that, we'll see which directions that Baylor and Kansas State go from here. It'll definitely be interesting to see how Oklahoma does against Kansas State this upcoming weekend. There are some other series that will be taking place around the country. I'll let you go a little bit deeper on these, but what jumps off the page to me is Tennessee against A&M. Tennessee, they got swept by Missouri. This Missouri team looks legit. The pitching has been very good. They had Tennessee come to town and they did not back down at all. They went in they defended their home field. They got the sweep. Tennessee, man, I picked them to win it all before the year. I'm not feeling very good about that, because they have not replaced the bats from last year, and the arms have been good. Dolander had a rough go of it on Friday, which is always surprising, but you still have faith in the pitching there. But man, Tennessee has struggled to replace the arms. So you can add your thoughts there and then just rip through some of these other really good series around college baseball this weekend.
Yeah, when you see Tennessee bunting in the 2nd and 3rd inning, you're thinking, what is going on here? Because that's not Tony Ball at all, right? Missouri, they came out and they absolutely barreled up Dolander. They barreled up Beam. They were having none of it. And they played in front of all of 39 fans in Columbia, Missouri. And I've spent a lot of time in Columbia, Missouri, having family there. And that, it's not a nice ballpark. Let's be honest. I was shocked when I saw the first score, and then it happened again and again. I was like, oh my God. But A&M, they got beat by LSU. They actually won the Sunday game. They came back from 5 or 6 down to win it. So maybe they're kind of coming back up, and But it'd be crazy if Tennessee loses back-to-back series weekends or weekend series, because as you said, many people had kind of them as a kind of dark horse behind LSU to win it all. So not that they still can, it's just it's very interesting start to SEC play. Staying in the SEC, number 1 LSU versus number 5 Arkansas. Talk about no easy day. Yeah, that's going to be a doozy right there. So I'll definitely be keeping an eye on that event. Number 3 Florida, who's obviously got the Ohtani version of the American Castellon. He's just been raking the ball. They play number 13 Ole Miss. And the reason this is interesting is Ole Miss has been really good this season, but then got swept by Vanderbilt last weekend. That's a big series for both Florida to kind of prove themselves and for Ole Miss to try to bounce back. The home run leaders of the nation with 56, which is an insane number, is South Carolina. The yard cocks, as they now apparently go by instead of gamecocks. So there's hitting a yard ball. I mean, just crazy. They're playing Missouri. So that's a really fun looking series all of a sudden because of what Missouri just did to Tennessee. And then Virginia versus Florida State. Florida State had Florida on the ropes early on the midweek game and then got blown out. I don't know what's going on at Florida State. Link Jarrett got ejected for the first time. I think he's going through some first season feels, but Virginia's been good. That'd be an interesting series out in the ACC. And then the big ACC series is number 2 Wake Forest versus Miami. Miami's looked really good as of late. They've had some up and downs, but Wake Forest can absolutely pitch and can hit, and they suddenly look like a team that you don't want to see in Omaha based on the way they've played recently. So a lot of good baseball this weekend again.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a loaded weekend. I mean, you mentioned what stood out to me was the Vandy sweep of Ole Miss. Vanderbilt, man, they look super solid, like very well-rounded team. They've got the high upside starters, the bats, they've got the power, they've got the speed, they take their walks, they play really clean defense. I like a lot of the relievers. Vanderbilt, man, they feel like an Omaha team almost for sure at this point. They are looking really good to start the year. SEC's a gauntlet. We know that. There's going to be a lot of interesting games, man. What a great sports weekend it is, man. I mean, we've got all kinds of stuff. Texas basketball Friday night. We've got Xavier. They've got some guards. They've got one big man down there. I don't know if their big man is any match for Dylan Dessou, aka Hakeem Olajuwon, aka Anthony Davis lately. Dessou is on a tear. You love to see it. Friday is going to be a night, man. I will be at the dish in the press box, locked in on the baseball, of course. And then when the basketball comes on, my mind is just going to be running a million miles an hour, man. It's going to be all over the place. I'm going to need to take a nap Saturday morning or something before I get to the park because Friday night, man, when you got the opener versus Tech and Gavin Cash coming to town and Texas Tech, they're going to be doing all their Tech stuff. And then you've got Texas in the Sweet 16 in basketball for the first time in 15 years. I'm going to be on overload, man. It's going to be a lot. I'm just going to need to be able to try to sit there quietly in the press box. There's going to be a lot going on, man. I don't know what I'm going to do without you on Friday. I would be glad to see you on Saturday just to, calm me down, whatever state of mind I'm in.
Yeah. I'll be missing the game on Friday. I'm flying back from a work event, but I'll be trying to sneak on that plane Wi-Fi and then immediately jumping on to the radio call by Craig Way to see how everything's going. We didn't even touch on the WBC and the Ohtani versus Mike Trout finale. That was absolutely electric, but man.
WBC, man, it is awesome. If you're like a true baseball fan and you didn't watch the WBC, man, you really missed out. It was not just these past couple games. It was really good games, day after day after day. So if you miss out on this one, all I can say is, the next time it rolls around, I would really recommend checking that tournament out. It was a lot of fun. And of course it culminated with Ohtani giving Trout 2 100-mile-an-hour fastballs and then striking them out on just an absurd slider that could not have been placed any better. What a moment that was. It was weird.
That 100-mile-an-hour fastball middle, and you're just like, you're Trout and you can't catch up to it. You're doing something right as Ohtani.
Yeah, it was really funny watching all these Japanese relievers pump like 100 while I'm also looking at the other screen covering the Texas Incarnate Word game, and you've got these guys just serving up like 83-mile-an-hour cookies to Garrett Guillemette. I was like, this there's a little bit of a difference in skill here on the two screens, but yeah, man, WBC is awesome. College baseball is awesome. We got opening day here in a few weeks. It is the best time of the year to be a baseball fan. That is for sure. It doesn't get any better than this. If you want tweets about baseball, you can follow us on Twitter. You follow me at Aaron Little OB. Zach can be found at Zach at the Dish. Check us out on Orange Bloods. We are writing all kinds of stuff. We've got recaps. We've got game threads. Might have an announcement coming here soon. Be on the lookout for that. A lot of other great stuff on Orange Bloods as usual. Spring practice, all kinds of football nuggets. Keenan has the great basketball stuff going on. Man, it is just, we're going to be on overload this weekend. I hope everyone has a great weekend watching sports, watching Texas baseball. Zach, you got anything else before we get out of here?
No, tune in, check out the fun on Hit the Dish on Friday for some baseball action, and then head out to left field. I'm sure they'll have a TV to set up to watch the basketball game, and it's gonna be a lot of fun. It's always a good time when you're playing Texas Tech. So as long as you're not in Lubbock.
Yeah, as long as you're playing Texas Tech in Austin, it will be fun. All right, well, with that, everyone enjoy the week, enjoy the weekend of sports, and yeah, we'll get out of here and we will see everyone next week.
Welcome.